Hello, and welcome to the 8th edition of Global Youth's interview series. I am Ritik Agrawal, and with me I have Krisangi Kathotia. In today's episode, we will be discussing about reflections on India-UK economic ties. India and the UK have a strategic partnership rooted in the shared values of democracy, rule of law, equality, and free trade. The UK is India's key partner for a wide range of sectors, including trade, investments, defense, science, and technology. Prime Ministers Narendra Modi and Boris Johnson are committed to further strengthen this strategic partnership in the next very decade. Hence, we want youth and moreover young university students of both India and the UK to understand the reflections of India UK bilateral relationships.
So today we have with us Mr. Varun Mali, who is the head of trade at the British Deputy High Commission at Hyderabad, India. Mr. Mali, I request you to please introduce yourself.
Sure. Thanks, Krishangi, and thanks, Ritik. I'm Varun Mali. I'm the Deputy Head of the Mission at the British Deputy High Commission in Hyderabad. And I also head the Trade and Investment team for the Department for International Trade, covering the states of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. So I represent, as I said, DIT, Department for International Trade. It's more like of the British government, which is similar to probably Ministry of Commerce and Industries that we've got in India. Whereas our parent organization, FCDO, which is Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, is more or less similar to the Ministry of External Affairs, which we've got in India.
Okay, thank you, sir. So let us begin with the interview. So my first question to you is, the COVID pandemic has significantly affected global supply and supply chains, and most importantly, has had a huge impact on economies all over the world. So what are your views on the current economic situation in India and any key statistics from a bilateral perspective?
Sure. I think firstly, India has definitely witnessed like a rapid economic expansion in the last 20 years or so. In 2019, it undertook the UK as well as France to become world's fifth largest economy with a GDP of about 3 trillion US dollars. It's also the third largest economy in the world when it comes to the purchasing power parity. India's economy now, I think, is 9 times larger in a dollar value terms, probably from 1990, the year where I was born. And it was also, I mean, there's been a slowdown since 2018, which we have all witnessed. Although it has still overtaken both France and the UK in GDP terms in that time, with the added impact of COVID, I think, which was one of the severest lockdown which we saw in our country, India will most probably like see a negative growth for some more time now, is what I feel. However, in 2022, as we all know, India will be hosting the G20, which is the world's most influential economic forum. And it also aspires to hold a permanent seat at the UNSC, which I think will be probably good when it comes to economic revival. India has also jumped 4 places since 2017 for goods export from the UK and is now the seventh trading partner and the ninth largest export destination for the UK. India was the UK's 13th largest trading partner in the 4 quarters, which ended at the Q1 of 2020, which accounted for almost 1.7% of the total trade. In fact, India was the UK's 20th largest export market and the UK's 11th largest import market in the 4 quarters to the end of Q1 of 2020, which accounted to almost 1% of UK exports and about 2.3% of UK imports. Coming to the current situation now, we've seen that the number of cases has almost touched 7 million. India's tally is kind of growing as is now the second highest in the world when it comes to COVID. However, we've also seen that it has significantly impacted the economy here. And it's most likely that probably we'll be, we're already there where it's touched the GDP, Indian GDP has touched those figures, which have been historically down probably since 1996, where India's actually started reporting the GDP numbers. Having said that, of course, there are very strong measures which have been put in place. There's an excellent revival strategy which we read about. The recent examples include, obviously, the Atmanirbhar Bharat, which was Sri Narendra Modi ji's response, or probably I would call it a very turbocharging strategy for India's development, the entire initiative. Also, simultaneously, in a recent address, the Foreign Secretary of India, Shri Harshvardhan Shringla, he underlined that India has gone through several historic economic reforms to improve the ease of doing business strand. And we've also climbed up the ladder when it comes to the Global Innovation Index. Of course, the pandemic has caused a major impact, not only to India, but worldwide. And I think such strategies and planning will definitely help us minimize this gap which has got created because of the pandemic. And a lot of work, what we do at the British High Commission in India or the Department for International Trade here, has been around finding out and doing some extensive economic research to come up with strategies and plans, which will at the end of the day have win-win type of a situation for both the countries. And obviously, it's purely from an economical revival point of view.
Right, I agree with you, Mr. Mali. And let's move on to our next question. We
Sure.
have been hearing about the UK India Joint Economic Trade Committee, JETCO, which happened
Yeah.
in July 2020. Could you please
Yeah.
shed some light on the same?
Sure. So at JETCO, which happened this year in July 2020, the UK and India, we've agreed to deliver an enhanced trade partnership to deepen our trade relationship by improving barriers to both trade and investment, and more importantly, to progress alongside a roadmap to deepen these ties. And subject to progress, this could potentially lead to signing a free trade agreement as well in the future. In fact, since its inception, the first UK-India JETCO, which happened in 2005, India has contributed more to the global GDP than any country outside China and the US. The strength of UK-India strategic economic partnership is also considerable. I mean, with overall trade increasing by almost 10%, which is valued to about 25 billion or 24 billion pounds in 2019, I think there is much more that we can do together as both the countries, drawing on the strengths of both our economies. Of course, trade and investment sits at the heart of UK-India relationship. And as the UK assumes an independent trade policy, we are committed to developing an ambitious trade partnership with India that will deliver prosperity and social benefit to both the economies and people. And coming back to JETCO, I think it's the UK's longest standing JETCO, which has been meeting for almost 15 years now. And it's an excellent example which demonstrates the commitment from both the countries, from both the sides, to deliver something which is more ambitious in terms of trade investment and the wider partnership. In fact, this meeting, which happened on the 24th of July this year, focused on some specific sectors like trade, partnership in terms of removing barriers, food and drink, healthcare, life sciences, IT, data, chemicals, and the wider services sector.
That's pretty interesting for like the economic point of view for both India and UK. However, what are the key drivers from your standpoint for the bilateral trade and investment work, and any top statistics that you'd like to share with us?
Sure. So what I'll do is I'll start from the trade side. The UK and India, we've historically, the relationship when it comes to trade has been always strong and is growing. In fact, I mentioned this statistic a while ago as well. The bilateral trade between India and UK has almost reached 9.7%. It's almost 10% and is valued at about 24 billion pounds in the last financial year, which was 2019. In the same year, the UK was the largest European market for export of Indian goods. UK's goods exports to India have also shown a market growth in certain segments, which I mentioned are also part of the JETCO sectoral work streams. These sectors include inorganic chemicals, where the exports actually doubled in 2019 to about 142 million pounds. We've got pharmaceuticals, which increased by 21%. And in fact, even in some beverages, the growth was pretty significant to about 19%. Another sector where we saw some rise and traction was in terms of exports of services to India, which included professional and management consulting services. In fact, in 2019, this sector got doubled, reaching to about 442 million pounds. And other notable sectors, which are slightly less conventional, I would say, would be the travel services as well as intellectual property. And at this point, as we speak today, India has jumped 4 places since 2017 for goods export from the UK and is now UK's 17th trading partner and 19th largest export destination, which I just mentioned. And UK and India benefit from a very unique living bridge of people, ideas, institutions that sits separate to the G2G or the government to government relationship that we have. The UK has an Indian diaspora base of almost about 1.5 million people who contribute significantly to prosperity on both sides. And this is also evident in a part by the fact that UK is the largest European source of remittance to India. In fact, if I remember correctly, in 2018, there was a report that this total remittances to India were about $4 billion or $3.9 billion around that range. And coming to the investment side, the UK and India have a strong investment relationships, with UK and Indian investments contributing to over 500,000 jobs in each other's economies. It's pretty interesting and also shows that there's a lot of work which can be done. I would also, like to talk you all through some key statistics on the investment side. The combined revenue of Indian companies in the UK has grown by 87% in the last 5 years. The UK is the second fastest growing G20 investor in India over the last 10 years. And since 2000 till March 2020, UK has cumulatively invested about 28 odd billion dollars, helping create more than 400,000 direct jobs. And it's also significant on the other side, in the other direction. That means India is the third largest destination for investment. Sorry, UK is the third largest destination for investment from India, which accounts to almost 10% of India's total overseas investments. And this was reported between the period of 2018 to 31st of July 2020. As we speak now, there are 842 Indian companies in the UK which employ about 110,000 people. And these companies together have raised almost 41 billion pounds as revenue in the year of 2020. And the last point, which is pretty interesting, is India is now is UK's second largest source of inward investment in terms of number of projects. The year before last, it was 106, and in the year of 1920, it was 120 new projects. And in fact, that's something which I'm really proud of because I'm a part of this foreign direct investment, the FDI team, which works here in India.
Right. We are glad about the work that you and your team does back at the Deputy High Commission, sir. Uh, London being one of the world's most important financial center, would you want to briefly touch upon the financial relationship between both the countries, India and the UK?
Sure, Ritik. So, Indian issuers have raised almost 11.5 billion pounds at the London Stock Exchange. Now, this is through three ways. We've got the masala bonds, dollar bonds, and green bonds. And this happened in the period of June 2016 to May of this year. And as we know, London is the global home capital. Over 2.5 billion pounds in masala bonds have been listed as of now at the London Stock Exchange by Indian companies. I'm sure you must be aware of a term called UKEF, which is UK Export Finance, and that actually gives support to various overseas project partners, and it gives like kind of attractive long-term financing that makes sourcing from the UK more competitive. And UKEF has an appetite of over 4 billion pounds to support UK exports to India. Also, UKEF's long-term and competitive international financing is available across all sectors with an option of financing in Indian rupees as well. And there's direct lending when it comes to sectors like clean energy or clean growth or sustainability type of projects. And just to give you a few examples, UKEF has provided financing supporting to Tata Group, which is now a Jaguar Land Rover in the UK, Reliance, Indigo, and Jet Airways.
That's pretty interesting, sir. So, my last question to you is, given that you are from the background of life sciences, what do you think are the top priorities for both the countries in this COVID pandemic times when both the countries are trying to fight this?
Sure. That's definitely an interesting question because in terms of my background, I'm a registered pharmacist and a pharmaceutical scientist, and I've always worked in this and been in this industry. So that's a sector which I is probably was more personal to me and in my role. Coming to the COVID situation, something that we are very proud of here is that UK and India have worked very closely to ensure key supply chains of pharmaceutical products and PPE are maintained throughout this COVID period, including for 2.8 million packets of paracetamol and about 11 million face masks, highlighting the role of UK and India as force for good, as we call it in the world of diplomacy. The partnership between UK pharma giant AstraZeneca and the Serum Institute back in Pune shows the important role of how UK and India have jointly come together for resolving this global recovery to COVID-19. The UK will continue to work with India to keep the supply chains open and flowing. And this is also in line with the G20 commitments, the broader G20 commitments which we do to the world. Beyond trade and investment, we've also got a different science and innovation dedicated perspective to this. And this is one of those departments which runs on four pillars. The other three include, of course, climate change, environment, tech innovation, and science diplomacy. However, healthcare and life sciences is also an important part when it comes to the bilateral work under science and innovation that we do. And the sub areas for this include UK India health and life science strategy coordination, antimicrobial resistance, healthy aging. There's also a project between our National Health Service, which is NHS, and the Ayushman Bharat project, which is going on. There's also a lot of collaboration and work happening around genomics, precision medicines, and vaccines, of course. And this is, as I said, it's a sector which is extremely important to both UK and India. And probably I mean, if I were to tell you how important it is, I can give you an example of maybe just the last 5 or 10 days. I mean, three projects where I was involved in, and what we've been doing in the last 10 days in this sector. So the first example would be we just had 20 companies, UK companies, participating in a virtual mission to India, wherein they got a chance to have almost 165 business to business B2B meetings in just 2 days' time. And a lot of Indian companies from across the country participated in this type of an event. My boss, who's the Deputy High Commissioner for Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, Dr. Andrew Fleming, just 3 or 4 days back was part of a virtual launch of a new course at the Birmingham City University, which is a MSc or PG diploma in advancing diabetes care, exclusively designed for medical practitioners across India. And again, this launch was attended by many academicians, NHS officials, healthcare practitioners across both the countries. And thirdly, we had our Foreign Commonwealth Development Office FCDO's Minister Lord Ahmed, who had a virtual meeting with Health Minister this week, where I understand they struck a great rapport in terms of the excellent bilateral collaboration which we are doing around vaccines. And also there was an ambition, or about how best do we foster on these ties when it comes to UK India healthcare and life sciences partnership, both over long term as well as medium term. I think this gives you a good snapshot of how important this sector has been for both the UK government and in India. And to be very honest, I'm fortunate to be a part of the Hyderabad team, because that's a city which is kind of the life science capital of the country. I'm sure you must have heard of the statistic that 1 in every 3 vaccine comes out of Hyderabad globally. And there are other statistics like it's a city which has got the most number of 100-bedded hospitals and so on. So for me, it's again, it gives me more opportunity on a personal level to kind of understand the sector well and keep on contributing to a lot of work that we do. And I know this is an event which is going to be attended and being viewed by a lot of youth across the country, and that's going to be my message for them as well, as we conclude that. I mean, these challenging times like COVID have taught us to kind of deal and embrace with change, and it's something which is also kind of gotten a spirit that never give up whatever the situations are. This was a year which was not forecasted, or we had no budget. We had not budgeted that this is going to be a COVID year and what to do. And this kind of impact on economies or businesses or people, even at a professional and personal level, has taught us a lot. And I think the youth today, kind of for them, it's something that you can take back home as learning and keep on continuing, growing and doing what you want to do. We are also in a very dynamic type of a time now where things will not remain the same any further. There's going to be this post-COVID world which will have its own challenges, and that's something which I think the youth understands well by now, and we kind of contribute to as much as we can. And probably, as youth of India and the UK, we'll continue to do the great work that we're all doing. So thank you so much, Krishangi and Ritik. It was a pleasure talking to you today. And I wish you and the entire Global Youth Forum, on behalf of our British High Commission in India, as well as a wider UK team, all the best in what you're doing. And I hope to connect with you further as well.
With this, we have come to an end of today's interview. On behalf of Global Youth, I would like to extend our warm regards to Mr. Varun Mali for giving us his valuable time and for sharing his insights on India-UK economic ties. Thank you for joining us, sir. We would love to have you on our future sessions, and we would want to stay connected. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you so much, Ritik.